All right, I wanted to take a few minutes before you guys took your test to talk about some of the things I've seen and some of the review stuff I've done with the other three classes that took the test yesterday. So, just a couple of things to remind you guys of as we're working through problems. I want to talk through it. When you're looking at these problems, I'm going to bring up my screen so I can type, so I can write on it for you. You know how parallel lines are the same slope, and you know how perpendicular lines are the opposite sign and the reciprocal. Be sure you're working carefully through the problems, and as you solve them, let me go ahead and jump to that screen. Back here to your study guide screen. Come on. There we go. Back to the study guide screen. Make sure you're working through these to be careful that if the double negative, that's how you got this one as your answer. Okay, that allows them to be parallel. When you're working through problems like this, remember the shortcut we talked about, that you can find the slope of any problem that's in our our standard form equation by taking the opposite of A divided by B. Excuse me. So for example, on letter C over here, the opposite of A would be -3 divided by B, and B would be -1. So that makes my slope 3 when I simplify it. And you can see that's the same answer I would have gotten here. And since I'm looking for a slope of 1/3, not +3, it's obviously not the right answer. And you see the last one, D, is the right answer. Be sure you're careful as you work through parallel. You remember you can do parallel and perpendicular using slope-intercept. You don't have to use point slope, but you can do either one. But remember to take the negative reciprocal of perpendicular to make it work. Moving down on these last two. Now, I wouldn't have done it this way. Let me clear my screen. I wouldn't have solved it this way, and this kind of illustrates the reason why we reset ours. Instead of resetting it to 84, we would have reset it to 0, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and finally the last one would have been 18. Okay, so we would reset them there, and that would have said, because right now if we reset it to 84 through 2,102, it says that we have -186 children going to our preschool, and that's not a possible problem because you can't have less than 0 people. When we reset it, we'd have the same slope. We would have gotten 2.67x plus 37.7. And when you plug in instead of 110, you would plug in 26 to this equation right here to get the answer, and you'd still get 107.13. Now, I won't take it points off if you put 0.13 on your homework or anything or your test, but just kind of keep in mind you can't have 1/1300ths of a person. You have to have a full person, so you have to have 107. This one would have been done the same way. Remember, weeks and years are not the same thing. Weeks don't have to be reset. They're just 1 through whatever. Just years has to be reset to 0. Okay, and you can see how this person was able to work the problem down to 12 weeks. Okay, let's take a look at the next section. I'm going to zoom out on this one just a little bit so we can see the whole screen at once. There we go. I know it's a little harder to see, it's smaller on your screen, but it gives us a better piece behind this. The biggest piece, the key I'm telling you guys right now, is that you memorize the direct variations ratio for K, that K is equal to Y over X, and that your K here is equal to X times Y. Those really are the keys to keep in mind. The equation forms are important to know that it's K times X and K divided by X, but be sure you know these what K is equal to as well. And that's what this ratio part is talking about. We know that anytime we have the graph, now the graph didn't have to look exactly like this, it just has to go through the origin like the note says. And I had several kids talk to me today and say, well, what if I put my graph over here, Mr. Maloney? Is that still inverse variation? And it is. It just happens to be the negative version of inverse variation, and that's fine. Another piece, again, this is the same. This kind of repeats off of what we talked about down here. How do I test for it? How do I know if something is direct variation? I set up all the ordered pairs as Y over X, and I set up all the ordered pairs if I want inverse variation. I set up all the ordered pairs to be x times y. If they're all x times y, it's inverse variation. If it's all x divided by y and I get the same, or sorry, y divided by x, and I get that same number every time, it's going to be the direct variation. And how I find missing ones, when I have directly, I set up that proportion, that it's y over x is equal to y over x when I'm talking about direct, and over here when I'm talking about the other one, it would be x times y. Make this a little bit bigger so you all can see it. X times y is equal to xy. That's how we check. That's how we find missing digits. We'll have 3 of our digits, and we'll have one missing. We solve for the missing digit, and we'll do the same here. We'll solve for the missing digit this way. Then you had a couple parts here. Here's one of them. Let me clear this off. When you're working on a problem like this, the inverse, so constant is k, is negative. So you can see that this one, when I look at this one, right there, I'm going to change my color back, is that if I would do 8 over 7, that would give me the first one, but 14 over 4 and 28 over 2 aren't division. So I know they're not direct. They'd be inverse. It means that if I multiplied them all together, I get a negative 56. Where here, if I did y over x, a lot of kids were telling me today, they tried to do x, they told me the k was 3 on this one, but it's y over x, just like slope would be, okay? Then we come down here and very directly, we get the idea, and we set up those cross multiplication of y is negative 6 and 60, and then our inverse variation of 4 times 21 and x times 12. Last set of problems I had you guys work on were these. I had more kids with this as the issue, okay? So on this particular problem right here, specifically part of 1A, one of the things you want to keep in mind when you read the problem is you always set up a direct variation and inverse variation this way at word problems. Y is always the first thing it's given to you. X is always the second thing. So since Y is points, because it's the first thing given here, and X is minutes, it's the second thing given here, I get minutes over points over minutes. So that's how I get 1/3. They get 1/3 a point per minute. Now, you could also have taken that 1/3 and plugged it in right here as 1/3 instead of 8 over 24, but you could solve it either way. Either way, you're going to get your answer. You're going to get 18 points. Same down here. These are inverse variations. So to find inverse variation, again, that's x times y equals k. This one's a little easier because it doesn't really matter what order you put them in as long as you have both speed and time. And then down here, since we're given speed and time on that first one, we get that 73.3 times 30. That would be equal to 25 times whatever the other number is. And we could solve the problem, and you can see right here, it solves out to 87.96 feet per second. One of the things I've got to remind you about, and this is saying I told this to other classes, be sure when you're rounding, round always, no, that's not how you spell always to the nearest hundredth. So we're talking about the penny place. So if it's like here, 87.9 is not to the nearest hundredths, it's 9.6. And to really figure out what that would be, you'd look over here at this next point and go, oh, okay, it's 4, it stays where it goes, doesn't go anymore. Add no more. But keep that in mind, 5 or more, you go up and round up, add 1 more. But those are some of the key things. Be sure you are taking care of it. Keywords. If you see the word direct, you've got to think y over x, or y equals kx. If you see the word inverse, anything, now it could be inverse anything, doesn't matter what it is. Inverse is k equals xy, or if you're asked for the equation, y equals k divided by x. Be sure you're doing what it's asking. Be sure you're reading carefully for the problems, okay? Show your work every single step so I can give you partial credit. I'll be back this afternoon and I'll start working on those tests during 5th period. Hopefully I'll have them done same day. All right. Good luck. You guys will do great.